Hello and welcome to Radivision, the new home of entrepreneurship. And this is another episode of Stories Live, where we're talking to entrepreneurs on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19. I am your host, Wade Shepard, and with me today is David Weingard, the CEO and founder of Cecelia Health. How are you doing today, David?
I'm great, Wade. Thanks for inviting me here today.
Yeah, no problem at all. Where are you at right now? It looks like you're in a hotel room.
In a hotel room on the road. That's part of what being an entrepreneur is. I'm based out of New York, but now I'm in the Midwest visiting.
Yeah. It's kind of funny you pay all that money for a New York apartment, but you're on the road all the time. So, about how many days a year would you say that you travel doing business? And
Pre-COVID, about 1/3 of the time, and now whenever people will meet with me outside, and feel comfortable and safe.
mm-hmm. Yeah. You travel almost as much as I do. I'm usually based in Asia, and I usually stay on the road just covering stories. But I don't know. It's a fun perk to the lifestyle, but it drains on you after a while.
Absolutely. And today I drove to the Midwest. I wasn't getting on a plane, so it was about 11 hours yesterday.
Oh man, you must be pretty beat.
All good.
Oh, good. Anyway, David, to start out with, can you kind of how did your entrepreneurship story begin? What is your background, and how did you get to this point where you wanted to start companies and engage in business?
So I had entrepreneurism in my genes. I didn't really realize it or is in tune with it because the roles that I chose when I was with internet startups and with large public companies were really innovative roles where we had to build something and do something cutting edge. And so that really always excited me. And when I was training for my first Ironman triathlon with one of my buddies who is an entrepreneur, and he told me he goes on these retreats with other entrepreneurs and presents the business plan and all this, I was saying, I don't get it. Why aren't you going with your family? And now I completely get it because I've been on the journey. So, it's in the genes, and when you find the right thing that you're passionate about, you go after it.
Mm-hmm. Now, what were some other things that you tried before you realized that this was your passion?
So I was in tech. So I was part of companies that, built new products, launched new products, new channels. I was head of business development for a public company that was acquired by another public company right before the internet era. But again, all in tech. My world changed when I was diagnosed with diabetes and I entered the healthcare space.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Let's back up a little bit. You mentioned that you were running triathlons. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've been a runner since I was 17 years old. I did my first marathon, the New York Marathon back then. And about 20-something years ago, I got hooked into triathlons. I love the competitive nature of doing it, swimming, biking, running. And, I'm not by any chance the front leader, but I'm in the mix in the middle and always looking to beat the competitors in my age group and do the best I can. And it's really, it adds focus and dimension, and it's a passion. Actually, I'm fortunate my wife shares in it with me, so we plan trips around it and vacations, and
you do some pretty extreme events too, right? Like survival races and stuff.
Yeah, we for one of my birthdays, I got my wife to commit to run across the Grand Canyon with me, which we started at 4 a.m. in the dark. And got to the other side about 9 hours later, and it was just the two of us. So, we were equipped, and those are the moments. We did a swim run race out of Maine 2 years ago, where you basically swim from island to island. You swim with your clothing, special wetsuit, and my wife and I were tethered together, if you can imagine it. So it's not only a race; it was a test of our marriage. And we did it in about 5.5 hours, but we did it.
I can't make it on a 2-person kayak 15 minutes with my wife. So I can't imagine. But anyway, now do you find any parallels between doing these extreme races, these extreme long distance, like physically enduring races and doing business and kind of starting a company?
Without question, because first of all, when I'm training for a race or I'm going to do a race, again, I'm not in the front, I'm a mid-packer, but I'm committed to do the best I can that day, and I'm always going to finish. And it's the same thing with a startup company, beginning with an idea and growing it, is that there are so many challenges. There are great days and there are days that are just, you don't understand, and you have to be committed to the end point, or your vision for the end point, or how to keep it sustainable. And you have to have the fortitude for those tough times. And I think the other part is the discipline. I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I go to bed early. It's a lifestyle, and it keeps me focused, so that when I do my work, I'm completely in the zone, just like I am during training. So for me, it's really helped. And then the added dimension of having diabetes, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, has really given me the positive energy, not to get sucked into all, what could be from the chronic disease.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's talk a little bit about your diabetes diagnosis. Now, you didn't get it until you were 36 years old, and you're doing these extreme races, and then all of a sudden you go to the doctor, and what happened?
Yeah, so I was training for a survival race, per our discussion, and people said I looked thinner, and I didn't really get it. I just thought, that's what comes with the intense training. And one Sunday, I'm working out 5 hours in a row, and by Thursday that week, I could hardly walk the 3 blocks to my doctor's office in New York City. I had no energy, stepped on a scale. The doctor told me I'd lost 30 pounds in 3 weeks, and I had type 1 diabetes, which of the 32 million people with diabetes in the U.S., about 5 to 10% have type 1. Type 1 means your body doesn't create insulin anymore, and you need to either inject insulin throughout the day or wear an insulin pump, which is what I do. And then the other 90% are people who have insulin resistance, which they either need insulin or with lifestyle and exercise can manage their diabetes. But they're very related. But I was really overwhelmed. I didn't know what it was. I have no diabetes in my family. I was given the script for insulin, an appointment with the nurse the next day. And I went looking for help. The information on the internet is very superficial. And this is really a total upside-down, life-changing event. And I went to the local hospitals in New York City. The diabetes training classes were months away. And I needed help right then. So I was fortunate to meet a great diabetes educator and nurse named Cecelia, who fit me into her overbooked schedule and gave me the support, the education, the compassion, sense of empowerment that I needed to live a rich life with diabetes, which thankfully I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't imagine that happening. I mean, I'm 39 years old, and I can't imagine going to the doctor and suddenly being diagnosed with this chronic illness that I would have for the rest of my life. I mean, that must have been quite a shock to have this happen so suddenly, especially since you were so athletic and fit, and I'm imagining pretty healthy. I mean, I kind of think of diabetes as something that kind of happens either to people when they're young, or old people who are or people who aren't very healthy at all, and then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, type 1 diabetes is also called juvenile diabetes. So it's typically impacts and seen with a younger age. You see a lot of children less than 10 or between 10 and 20 being diagnosed. I think 80% of the type 1s are probably diagnosed at that time. But it's become more common for whatever reason. Nobody knows. It's medical science. For the body to shut down insulin production at some later point in time, which mine did. And there's no explanation, there's no why. With type 2 diabetes, you need, you have a genetic disposition, but it's usually triggered by lack of exercise or weight management or nutrition. And most of the time it's reversible, or at least managed with minor medication. Type 1 is serious. If I don't take my insulin, I'm dead. I mean, it's like black and white. It's that simple. So, I need insulin to live, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to manage my life as best as I can.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now, after the period of the initial shock that you have, this condition that you're going to live with forever, and you need this medication to essentially survive. What did you do next? How did you kind of turn this? I mean, if not positive, but make the most of the situation?
Well, it's interesting. So I started this saying, I'm going to rebuild. And literally my runs were like 10 minutes. Then, until my energy came back, my weight came back. And I would just say, like, every day, further and stronger, further and stronger. And really when the insulin kicks in and the body snaps back, I was able to do a marathon a few months later. I started rebuilding, figuring out how to do triathlons with diabetes because it's complex. If your blood sugar goes too low, you can pass out. If it goes too high, you get groggy. And what happens is you basically have three things going on at the same time. As you're exercising, your blood sugar is going down. As you eat, it goes up. And then you have the insulin, which is bringing it down too. And there's no like dial where you could see what's happening. So there's unbelievable amount of repetition and practice and simulations. And within 3 years, I was able to do a full Ironman triathlon again with type 1 diabetes. At the time, I was one of the few people in the world that had figured out how to do that. The first person was on ABC Worldwide Sports and tapped in for knowledge. And once I had done that, I realized, you know what? I got something here. I started giving back to the diabetes community, helping kids understand that they can live an empowered life with diabetes. And one day I was on the way to another Ironman race with my wife. We were changing planes in the Detroit, in the Denver airport, excuse me. And I just said, my professionally during the day, I was at Microsoft doing business development. I was like, why are we not using technology to scale Cecelia and make, this human touch available to everybody who needs it? Because there's too many people with diabetes and there's not enough clinical experts and endocrinologists, and there's this gap in the market. And let me figure this out. And that really became my passion and purpose.
Okay. So that was when you decided to start Cecelia Health, right?
Yeah, we were originally called Fit4D for whatever strange marketing reason at the time. But what happened is 2 or 3 years ago, I went back to thank Cecelia for helping inspire me to found the company and help hundreds of thousands of people so far, and found out she had passed away from cancer, and I didn't know that. And so the team and I decided to rename the company in her honor and memory. And frankly, we are about human touch first, helping people. Most of the people with diabetes that are struggling are not going to download an app or call in. They need someone to reach out to them as a lifeline and say, I'm here for you. And that's a human touch. We'll get them to use technology, but it's really Cecelia. And so, the name change was for her and her, for all the good that she did in the world, and frankly represents our brand really well.
Yeah, it's such like a quintessential story of entrepreneurship. You had this life experience, that led to discovering a gap in the market. You took what you knew already and you kind of filled that gap with Cecelia. Now, could you tell me a little bit more about what exactly you do? I mean, what exactly does Cecelia offer people with diabetes that they weren't able to get before?
So for people who have health plan coverage or are working with a particular pharmaceutical company or device company, we're typically representing those brands and reaching out to the patients to make sure they're following the doctor's care plan, that they understand the why. Most people don't understand what their blood sugars are or the measures or why it's important. They're overwhelmed. They walked out of the doctor's office like me, or not knowing where to turn next. There's a lot of fear about failure. Did I do something that caused the diabetes, especially with type 2 diabetes? Maybe they were overweight, or they weren't eating right, or they didn't exercise, or there were family pressures or stress. So helping them realize, it's not about you. Let's help you get to a healthier place. You may have, a grandfather who passed away from diabetes. That doesn't mean you will. Doesn't mean that you'll have the complications like heart disease or neuropathy. We can help. Let's do this together. We got your back. What's happening in your lifestyle? What's happening? You're juggling 3 jobs to take care of the kids, and how do we take care of you in the midst of it? There's so many stories, and all of them are personal. So finding out what is going on with the person, and then adapting the patient engagement, the journey, with an optimized mix of human and digital touch, because some people need certain education, help them get on the medications, on the devices, understand, and then you can kind of help them more through text and email, and be there when they need the phone call. And some people need a continuous, audio or video contact. So delivering what's the right touch at the right time, the right content. Somebody could be fine with diabetes, and then they have some life event and it's changed for 3 months. They're in crisis, and you help them through that. So being there, delivering return on investment to our clients, the health plans, the pharmaceutical and manufacturers, reducing cost, improving quality, and for the patient, helping them understand and be empowered in their life.
Exactly. That sounds pretty incredible. Now, this was kind of your first big company, right?
So I've been part of public companies and startups in the tech world, but certainly in healthcare, this is I didn't even know how to spell diabetes, frankly, when I was diagnosed. So this has all been a journey.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about that journey? What were some of the challenges in starting up Cecelia Health and decide that you were gonna like do this startup and that you were going to actually make this thing real? Now, what were some of the challenges along the way, along this journey from the conception of the ideal to where you're at right now?
That's a great question. The first challenge was that my 3 boys were young at the time, so I couldn't just leave Microsoft and do it. I had to work nights and weekends and prove the concept, which took me about 1.5 years, where we got enough data to prove that we can make this work. And then we signed our first client, which delivered cash flow. And then I left to do this full time and pursue the passion. So, number one, making sure you have, that cash flow and the clients. The other thing, frankly, looking back, we were way ahead of our time. Healthcare was not ready for quality measures. There were no incentives for quality measures. There was no digital health industry. There was no capital for digital health. When I did a round of investor calls, they're like, come back to us when you have millions of dollars of revenue. I'm like, okay, but that's the point. I'm trying to get there. Exactly. And we need capital. So frankly, we built the business in the first few years with real paying clients, and we kept innovating and optimizing what we were delivering to the market. And then we had, enough diversity of clients that we proved the model. And at the same time, the market caught up. We raised our first Series A about 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So you left, I imagine, a pretty decent job at Microsoft to do this after you only got like 1 client, and you have 2 young boys at home. So how did you know that you could do this and make this a success?
To be honest, I didn't know, but I knew. There's no crystal ball that says you're going to be a success at the end. But I knew it had to be done, and I knew that I couldn't not do it. Frankly, it was, and I liken it to one of the races that I did was an escape from Alcatraz triathlon, where they literally take you across San Francisco Bay and you jump off the boat and swim across the bay, and it's like you have no choice. You're in the middle of the San Francisco Bay. You have to get to the other side. And I liken that moment to just jumping off the boat. I'm going to do this, and I can't go back on the boat. I have to get to the other side. And so that's probably the best story I can give you to relate to how I felt.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, with doing these like crazy races, you know that there is a finish line, and you know that there is a course. With running a business, you don't have that.
Right.
It's wide open, right? It's about you every day doing what you can do to make it a success. That's pretty fascinating. So anyway, so you start Cecelia Health, you're successful. The company worked, right? And then COVID hit. What was your initial reaction?
Well, it was even more complicated for us as we were just closing a capital raise at the time. So the capital raise environment changed. We were fortunate to identify different investors that continue to invest, as we're a high growth company and we need capital to continue to innovate and grow. So things worked out for us. But it's like I said, it's never a straight journey, and it's not without its moments. At the same time, we realized, you know what we're delivering is essentially telehealth, which is what the market needs right now. People are at home. they're not going to their doctors. We started hearing from our pharmaceutical clients, guess what? People are not even getting scripts written because they're not going to their providers. The health plans are, struggling how to engage the populations that are now at home. So in addition, people are isolated, they're feeling the fatigue, the mental health stress, and there are phrases, like that are thrown out there, the COVID-15, which is synonymous with people have gained 15 pounds because they've been in their homes and they have been exercising. So, that also is not good for diabetes management.
Mm-hmm.
So we engage, and we're fortunate to have a great partnership with the Helmsley Charitable Trust. With them, we engage with some of the top diabetes clinics in the country where patients were scheduled to come in, and we basically took over a large percent of their patient caseload, delivering telehealth and engaging with the patients virtually in whatever way worked for them, audio, video, and helping them on from where they are, what did they need, and really, streamlining their onboarding to devices, onboarding to their medications, and then getting them ready for a doctor's appointment so that the clinics could scale. So it was a win all around. The patients were getting healthier, the clinics were able to see and engage more patients, and the doctors were so much more productive when the patients came in. Of course, the patients were cared for.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the COVID crisis kind of forced us as a global society to move into the future in a lot of ways. And you have this this company that's ahead of your time, and then all of a sudden, people are ready for you.
Absolutely. It's unlike the tech industry where literally you could have a meeting and draw an idea on a board and have a deal in a few weeks. Healthcare is actually very slow to disruption. It's it's complex. There's ingrained processes, and telehealth was making inroads. And thankfully, there was infrastructure set up, and companies like us who were able to step in. But now, it's not just a good thing; it's a critical thing, because what people don't even realize is, chronic diseases like diabetes are even worse now because people are not getting the care that they need. So before COVID, we were on track for 1 in 3 Americans having diabetes by the year 2030. So that was the trend then. And I'm not talking about type 1, I'm talking about more type 2 diabetes, progressive. And the cost to the economy and to our health system was huge. It was actually rated the number 2 problem by the chief medical officers of the health plan. Well, guess what? If people are home and they're not exercising, they're not eating well, they're not going to their providers, what do we expect to come out of COVID? People are going to be there's greater diabetes and poorer care, which leads to complications and costs. So the ability for us to engage virtually in telehealth now can minimize that impact and help as we come out, whenever we do, of this COVID, world.
Yeah. Now, was there anything that you had to do differently as a company to meet the demands from COVID? Are there any like new products or new offerings, or any way that you had to kind of transition to the COVID world?
Well, it's interesting because we were already on a product roadmap to take the coaching, the one-on-one experience that we're working with patients with this expert clinician, and solve for the problem that as much as we were doing, helping people learn and motivate them, they still had to go back to their provider for any medication changes. And they may or may not do that. So we didn't have a closed loop in the system. And so we were already on a journey of setting up the first virtual diabetes and mental health clinic in the country, where we have the same core coaching capability, but using data science and the real-time data feeds from diabetes devices that read the blood sugars, and then escalating a portion of the patients to a virtual team of endocrinologists, diabetes specialists across the country. And so we were changing our legal structure, essentially be a telemedicine company for diabetes. And now that COVID has happened, and with the accelerated need, and that people are already having challenges getting to endocrinologists, there are only 3,000 in the whole country for 32 million people with diabetes. So now picture they are not even going So our ability to provide the complete patient care, not only the coaching, not only understanding the devices, but be able to prescribe and titrate. We can partner with the primary care physicians to really help people and scale. And so we really, we started to amp up our investment and capital use on product development. And we're launching actually with one of the largest national payers or this week for the first virtual clinic.
Excellent, excellent. So how are you going? I mean, it seems like you have a lot of momentum built up right now. How are you going to keep this momentum going, like after the COVID crisis?
Well, we don't know when the COVID crisis is going to end, and diabetes is unfortunately not going away. So we are all about scale. Our mission and goal is frankly to bring a piece of Cecelia to everyone with diabetes on the planet. And diabetes, by the way, its sister conditions are cardiovascular disease and obesity. So we do a lot of work with those two as well. So being able to support chronic care and deliver scale, use technology to scale, to segment patients, do the behavioral work, take in data from devices, do the analytics to help our clients market better, to provide better reporting back to the patients. We're investing in that. We're also investing, obviously, in sales and marketing to expand our distribution. We're a B2B business, so we work closely with health plans, regional, Blue Cross plans, national plans that give us access to the patients who need it.
Now, were there any additional challenges that kind of COVID kind of imposed on your business, and how did you overcome these challenges?
So our corporate office in New York City, everybody was working in the office every day. That became virtual. Our clinical team, of course, was already virtual across the U.S. and supporting patients in English, multiple dialects, Spanish, Chinese, etc. But the corporate development, the salespeople, we all had to move to a virtual environment like everybody else. And to be able to do that effectively really relied on our culture. And we had been working on our culture for 4 or 5 years, excuse me, which is very results-based. We get stuff done. We go the extra mile. We work as a team. We're compassionate. And living those core values, we're very efficient every day and using it, over-communicating electronically. I send out a daily meditation to everybody that's a reflection. And I send out an audio call every Sunday of how the business is doing, usually with some also an inspiration or meditation. So trying to over-communicate and involve people virtually has been key in keeping the corporate office engaged. And frankly, we just started in New York City, a few people a day, 1 day a week, just for people to see each other. We're looking at events that are in the park so people feel comfortable, just to remember they're part of an entity and not alone.
Yeah, exactly. Now, do you think any of these changes will be kind of permanent for you, for your company? Do you think you will and have all these people come back to the corporate office if and when the COVID pandemic ends, or did you kind of transition and make these permanent changes that you think you will keep on into the future?
I think it's really important for people to be together, especially in a high growth entrepreneurial environment. You need the relationships and the brainstorming, but we're not going to put people's health at risk. So, it's optional right now for employees, and we make sure it's safe. We're committed to restart as soon as it is safe to do it. Having said that, there is a degree of efficiency that we're getting right now with reducing people's time to commute, and people are going the extra mile to our culture of working longer hours and getting stuff done on time. So, I think it's an evolving question, especially that the unique thing that we're under is we're in New York City. So unlike other parts of the country, you have to take public transportation typically to get to work. So it's less about the workplace as getting to and from work. And so we're going to have to take that as it unfolds.
Exactly. So now, having diabetes, I mean, would you consider yourself, or people with diabetes, they're more at risk of having complications from COVID. So how are your clients protecting themselves during this pandemic?
I mean, there's a range. There's people who are, staying in their house and protecting themselves, and there's people who have to go out to their jobs regardless to take care of themselves and their families. So that's part of the value that we bring them in coaching and mentoring them is walking them through what they need to do and making sure that they do it and take care of themselves, because if they stay safe, then they could stay safe for their family. So it's, again, these are the dynamic situations that if you have somebody in your corner that understands you, they can help you navigate. It's also the kids, should you send the kids to school? Should you not? And it's not just about it generically, but if you have diabetes, what's the impact to you personally if they come back with COVID? These are complicated discussions.
Okay. All right. Now, I just have one more question before we start taking some questions from the audience. What are you're a successful entrepreneur. You left your more normal job. You created this company. You've walked that path. You've taken that journey. Now, what are 3 pieces of advice that you have for kind of prospective entrepreneurs out there? Maybe young people who want to change like you did when you started Cecelia Health, or want to kind of follow kind of a similar path as you did.
Well, one is, I think the easiest path to be an entrepreneur is to do something you're passionate about. And if you could find out what that is, that'll help you through the ups and the downs of the journey. The second thing is focus on sales. I mean, I've done product development. In fact, my first job was writing code. My undergraduate's in computer science. But at the end of the day, you need to have cash flow in the business to be able to invest and build it, and also to attract investors. The greater cash flow and the greater profit you have, or close to profitability, reduces your dependence on investors, and frankly enables you to have choices. You could take in capital or could not. And so I would say, if you're a sales, if that's in your genes, make sure you pay attention to it. If it's not in your genes, find someone who will complement you, and make sure you pay attention to sales. And then the last part I'd say is to take care of your team, because if you could get a great team around you, then you can accomplish anything. And I'm really fortunate to have that at Cecelia now, and it's taken a few iterations in the journey. But the sooner you leverage that and find people who share the common cause and this common passion and a proven experience, ideally people in your network that could be vetted, then you're unstoppable.
Exactly. That's fascinating, David. Now we're going to take some questions from the audience. Okay. Christy Jenks asks, what do you do? What do you do what do you attribute your success to?
It's probably a variety of things. It certainly solving for the right problem. We have a crisis in the U.S. and the world with diabetes, so we're solving for something that's big. Having, great team that rallies around the cause, and the never give up attitude, and then, frankly, sales and investors to have the cash flow and the runway that we were just talking about. And I think it's always having a humbleness, that you may not know all the answers, but you're willing to go out to other entrepreneurs. I just had some things that came up over the last week that I reached out to my network that have helped me so much, guide me to some next steps on things. And so, really being able to realize that you could learn a lot from other people and you will be that much stronger, I think is absolutely key.
Excellent. Okay. David Rogers asks, do you also provide mental health screenings and counseling?
Yeah, so until today, we've been doing it integrated with the diabetes coaching by the diabetes expert clinician like Cecelia. And as we launched the virtual diabetes and mental health clinic, we actually realized we needed to have a separate group where the diabetes educator screens the patient, and then there's resources that are, specialists in mental health, because 40% of the people with diabetes have some form of chronic depression. I mean, it's a tough disease. It's a job no one wants. It's 24/7. And so we've really amped up our mental health capability, but it's integrated, so the patient has an integrated experience, and it rounds out and delivers the outcomes.
Excellent. Okay. Nathan Smith, he asked, what is unique about delivering personalized telehealth services for people living with diabetes and related chronic conditions?
I mean, it's a great question. It's just, diabetes is so complicated, as I was saying. So everything, for me, as an example, everything that I eat, I have to plan for. I have to plan what insulin, how long is it going to have an impact if I exercise, that, all those things about maintaining blood sugars and having access to medications. For a lot of people with diabetes, they live in different socioeconomic groups. So how do they afford it? What other options are there? We have Spanish-speaking patients who may not understand what the English-speaking doctor said. There are issues specific to children, to peds, that are different than they are for adults. Do people want to share that they have diabetes in the workplace, because it would be safe if people around them knew, because if they had a high blood sugar or a low blood sugar, people around them can help them. But at the same time, people don't want to be at risk. They don't want to be looked at as less than or put their job at risk. So there's a lot of complicated areas around diabetes besides the day-to-day managing of it, and that's what we have to help them with.
Okay, excellent. And we just have one more question before you wrap up. This is a question from Suren. Tell us more about your most recent $13 million Series B funding round. Technical question.
Yeah, so we're really focused on that scaling Cecelia to the 32 million people in the U.S. and then eventually the 700 million in the world, as I talked about in the beginning. And to do that, you need capital, you need growth capital. And closing the Series B was a proof point for us. We showed traction in our client base, we showed outcomes, we showed the team delivering on what were our commitments. And so raising that capital enables us to invest in marketing and sales. We brought in some very strategic investors that are opening doors for us to open for clients. So that's another tip for entrepreneurs, is it's always great to get capital in, but having alignment with your investors and making sure also they add value in some way, that they could help you grow the business. That's even better, more than just writing a check. So we're putting that money to use to really ramp up and make an impact, scale our social impact.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Now, do you have anything else you'd like to say? Any final words, any advice or words of wisdom to all the entrepreneurs out there?
It may sound cliche, but follow your heart and do what you believe. And if you believe in it and you can maintain the course ahead, there's a high likelihood you'll succeed. And the other thing is, save your pennies for a rainy day. There are things that even entrepreneurs can overcome, and make sure you have money for your family and for yourself to operate outside the business. A lot of entrepreneurs put their own core cash flow at risk, and to the degree you could limit that, so that you have the ability to make choices without dependency, that's a great thing.
Oh, that's excellent, David. Well, thank you very much for talking with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And that about wraps everything up. Thank you for watching Radivision, the new home for entrepreneurship, and our COVIDpreneurs series. Please keep watching for more episodes in the future. And thank you very much.